like to ask you, and you touch on this in your book, but I'd like to hear more if you're willing to share more,
Okay.
is sort of because you talked about your epiphanies in the interview
Yeah.
that's on your website, right? But I'm guessing that there were things that led up to that, to this point where you find yourself now.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe a little bit of that evolution that you've gone through? Because,
Yeah.
we all go through evolutions.
Yeah. I think what's hard is, I mean, I feel like since I came out of the womb, I've had things planned and lined up very nicely.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't say that I'm not spontaneous, but I am definitely someone who likes to be in control. So for me
Hmm.
to get to a period of my life where I am now, where I don't feel as in control, I feel like I'm right within reach of being able to get everything I want, but I feel like this is the first time in my life where I'm having to really step back, um, and I guess watch things a little more and listen a little more than be
Hmm.
so active. So in that interview that you're talking about, that's on one of my other websites called stalkingsuperwoman.com. That the purpose of that website is to show this process, kind of what it is to reach for what it is that you want. Um, and so I wanted to document the path to getting to the level of success that I wanted to get to. And in this process, I've just started kind of noticing some red flags. When I went to an event on the last night of the Tchaikovsky, where I was literally eating dinner with all these big wigs in the world of classical music and looking around at the table and seeing that they were nothing close to being strangers. They all knew each other. They all had these interconnections that went back for years. And I wasn't a part of that. I was still at the table with them, but I wasn't a part of that. And I realized that in order to become a part of that circle, that was going to take a whole nother lifetime of trying to intertwine myself into that circle. And it kind of hit me of, is that something I want to spend time doing? Um,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong if you want to do that, but I'm at a point now where I've decided that I really want to break off and do my own thing, that I'm not leaving classical music, but I'm not going to spend any more time trying to force classical music to accept me as I am, if that makes
I
any
think that's, no, it makes perfect sense. And I think that's awesome. And it's refreshing to me. And I think it's refreshing to other people too,
I hope so.
because I'm very active on Twitter,
Hmm.
and I am active, especially with a lot of people that I consider sort of on my level,
Yeah.
in that none of us are really competition, material.
Sure.
And we readily admit that,
Mhm.
it doesn't fit our personalities.
Yeah.
But so then we're all sort of faced with this question of, well, then what do we do?
Yeah.
You know, because if you know you can't do those things, if you know that it would put you in a place where you have to be someone else, that's not comfortable for any of us, you
Hmm.
know. But that
Well, I mean, I
poses some
think that's the
other issues.
freedom. I think that's the
Right,
freedom of it. I think
right.
first of all, the admission that you and your Twitter friends have made is not a shameful one. And
Hmm.
part of the reason that I wrote the Ultimate Guide is so that people aren't so busy making a list of what they can't do and where they don't belong, but that they
Right.
forget that part of things and just say, okay, well, if I'm not the Clyburn gold medalist, or the Tchaikovsky gold medalist, what am I? And it doesn't
Hmm.
mean that I'm lesser, but where
Right,
is my audience and where do I go?
right.
And you talk about Twitter. I think aren't you like the number 13th most influential?
I don't know, I don't know, I don't know.
I mention it only because I think you've used the platform so well, and actually just tweeted that I find your blog so endearing because you talk about the process in a way that I haven't really seen people talk about it. It's a very genuine honesty. So thank you for what you do
No,
beyond
no,
the.
it's been really, because I've kind of undergone my own evolution in these past years since I started Twitter.
Mm,
Ironic, Twitter and the people there have kind of helped me to realize and to ask the questions I should have been asking about what am I about?
yeah.
Who do I want to put myself with? You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
who do I want to talk with? Who do I get inspired by?
Mm-hmm.
So that it's been a really interesting shaping that way. And that in conjunction with the blog, together, it's just been so mind-boggling to me
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like, oh, this is me.
Yeah.
This is who I am. I'm happy with that.
Isn't it a great
And
feeling?
it is. It is so great. So you've kind of come to this realization somewhat recently, but I'm curious, uh, have you been doing any performing since you've been uh, coming out of this sort of revelation of yours?
Yeah.
And does it change how you approach performing?
You
Because you
know,
said you feel more freedom, but does that help with the performing aspect of it as well?
well, all I can tell you is what's happened in the past. When I'm playing for that string of questions that you were asking, if I'm not a competition player, then what am I? What do I stand for? Who do I want to talk to? The next really natural question to ask is, who do I want to play for?
Right.
And so that answer um, has been coming in a really wonderful way. So for the past, let's say, 3 to 4 years, I've had this kind of dual career where I call it I haven't really let the left hand know what the right hand's been doing, vice versa. And so I'll go to New York, and let's say I'm in New York for 4 days. And I may play. There was one week where I played with like the Philharmonic Orchestra of the Americas, and I played with them a concerto by this Cuban composer Tanya Leon. And then I played a few days later in Merkin Hall with this very classical chamber ensemble. And I also played solo music. And then I played out in Harlem at this great space called the Gatehouse where I did my electronics. And I was on cloud nine that week because I was getting to be, all of myself within a very short period of time. And what would happen is the audience from one venue would say, well, where are you playing next? And I almost felt the need to warn them. Well, I got to warn you, I'm not playing Beethoven. I'm going to be playing something with electronics. And they go, oh, we don't care. We just want to come. And they would come and they get something totally different at that next concert. And then that audience says, well, where are you playing next? So now I've got these two mixed groups that now becomes a group of three demographics all in one place. So that when I come out on stage, I look out and I do see the traditional white-haired classical audience of, 65 plus concert goers, 65-year-old plus. And then I may have some alternative crew, out in the audience with tattoos and piercings. And then I may have a heavily African American demographic who is just simply shocked that I exist. And they're excited by that and they want to support that because they don't see it in our community. We don't see many African American classical musicians, so they come. So then the audience is a mixed demographic. So now I'm working backwards. I'm crafting concert experiences that cater to the audience that I already know wants to see what I have to do. So it's all a bit scary as well as exciting because I'm now changing who I'm looking to for performance opportunities. So there is going to be a little bit of a gap here where I have to, see if what I want to happen will actually happen. So stay tuned.
Right. Very exciting. And I would imagine that as you get more and more comfortable in your own skin, as you discover what that is, that will show even in those concerto performances.
This
And
is
that
what I'm
can,
hoping. This is what I'm
me
hoping.
too, me too,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think I had my revelation after I started playing again, after I had my daughter.
Hmm.
And that's when I really realized, look, I have to be playing. I don't care where it is or what level, I want to be playing my best, but I don't care who I'm playing with. I have to play. And that started to affect my stage presence. I no
Wow.
longer dealt with anxiety because I knew I had no choice.
Hmm.
And I knew I was just so grateful to be on stage performing
Wow.
and
Wow.
connecting with people. Because when you know what it's like to be a new mom, you can feel very insulated
Hmm.
in your tiny world. And so to get out again and to be able to share in a musical way was just heaven for
Liberating.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally liberating.
Yeah.
So sure. A lot of the people I think that I do Twitter with or I tweet with, however you want to say that,
Yeah.
uh, they are also, a lot of them are mothers. They're
Wow.
music moms, just like you and I.
Hmm.
So I'd be curious to ask you how you think becoming a mom has affected your you as a musician,
Yeah.
or has it? Has it?
Well, I'll tell you, it's affected me so much that I keep saying my second book is going to be about being an artist and a mom. I don't know if there are books out there that do that yet. I'd have to look. But I felt completely unprepared. And I think that's mostly my own fault. People warned me, having a child is going to change your life. And because I buy into my own superwoman complex, I did not believe that. Um, and my son's birth was an ordeal. He came later than expected, and because I was a little bit too overconfident at what I'd be able to do post birth, I had scheduled to be back on tour within 2 months of having the baby. So
Wow.
yeah, it was absolutely crazy. So he was born November 10th, and I was due on stage in New York January 5th. And
Oh
all I
my
can tell you is that those 2 months after were probably some of the most nerve-wracking. And the advice that I give to future artist moms, people who are artists now who may be pregnant or thinking about having children, is give yourself the time to really adjust to being a mom and enjoy being a mom without the pressure of having to get back to your art. Doesn't mean that you don't practice your art while you're pregnant or right after the baby is born, but don't put the pressure of performance or having to launch an exhibit, 2 weeks after the birth. I think what's changed is, there's no place I'd rather be than with my son, of course. But it does make me realize even more that my art, like you realize, is still very important, and it's its own child. It's my own baby. It's another baby. I think the first thing we have to do is admit that we do have this other child that is our art, and then we have to decide how are we going to care for both of these children, or if you have 3 or 4 real kids, how are you going to care for all of these kids? Um, and it has been difficult, not so much the physicality of it, but just because I want to be 100% there for my son. And I
Right.
want to be 100% when I go on stage. So I think the obstacle is always not finding the balance, because I'm not sure if it really exists, but creating your version of balance. In the book, you mentioned that I talk about not only prioritizing, deciding when you're going to practice or what season you're in, because sometimes it's a networking season, then it's a performing season, but making your family aware of what you're
I
dealing
love that.
with. Isn't that important?
It
Um,
is it is so important. Yeah. I was gonna say, because what I and I have just started doing that. Just started making my daughter and my husband a little bit more a part of my process of figuring out, which time I'm in and how I'm gonna get the practicing in. And it's made a big difference, because I think before I was always waiting for those magic times that could be music times to happen. And you know what happens? They get swallowed up.
yeah, they don't come. When you
No.
wait on them,
And
they don't.
then no. And then I would feel this great pressure to be practicing. And I kind of, I guess, expected them to read my mind, but of course they didn't.
No.
So finally we got to the place, and thanks to you too, from reading the book, I was like, yes, I just need to say, here's the deal. I have this music I have to learn. I need you to help me. How are we going to do this? I need 2 hours a day. Where's it going to be? And
Awesome.
that's really helped. Yeah, it's helped. And it's my daughter is 6, and she's old enough now to actually enjoy the responsibility of taking part.
Ah.
And that was really eye opening to me.